Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Democracy Briefing podcast, episode number 1, the very first one. Welcome to the show. As I said, my name's Edward Wardley Wardle. I'm the host of the podcast, and we'll be running through basically elections and democracy politics with a heavy focus on the data. There's lots of podcasts out there which will tell you exactly how to vote and exactly what to do. I'm not really very interested in that. You guys are all big enough, old enough, and ugly enough to make your own decisions. But the purpose of this podcast really is to provide people with the data around the elections and around the politics and policies that they're interested in so they can make their own informed decisions. So that's the show. This is episode 1, and it is a really exciting one, as you can tell by the tone of my voice, really selling it. So the first episode is about the West of England, and precisely the West of England Combined Authority mayoral election, which is in 3 weeks' time on the 1st of May. This is a genuinely really exciting election, and not just because, full disclosure, time to declare interest, I am from the West of England. I was born in Bristol, I've raised in Bristol, lived away, and I moved back. So this is where I hail from. This is my region. It is the best bit of the UK, in my humble opinion, of course. There are other options, but it is an amazing place. And the election is fascinating. We have a very, very mixed political electorate across the mayoral region, and, you know, we have a very, very exciting potential outcome in the election, which is pretty much unprecedented in British electoral politics, a very, very rare event where we will have 5 parties who have a very good chance of winning this, and this is indeed a 5-way marginal. So anyway, I'm going to take us across to the slide deck and give you the briefing. Welcome to the very first show. I'm very excited to present. There will be more shows looking at more of the mayoralties and then the outcomes of the elections, and then we'll start going international as well. So thanks for listening, and let's go. Let's do it live. Right, just clicking on view. Let's do the slideshow. Right, team, here we go. So, like I said, episode number 1, Democracy Briefing Podcast. We are looking at the West of England Combined Authority. It's the mayoral election on the 1st of May 25. Combined authorities, bit of a mystery to people. It's a new layer of regional democracy in our devolution settlement in the UK. They were first established during the Conservative government around 1516, and the West of England Combined Authority, or WECA, as I'm going to repeatedly refer to it as, is a combined authority in the dark shaded area on the map on the page in the southwest of England. It covers 3 local authority areas, so local councils that sit below that: Bristol, South Gloucestershire, and then Bath and North East Somerset, also known as Baines. And the agreement between the central government and the local authorities to create the combined authority occurred in March 2016. This created the combined authority and the mayor position, which gifted the mayor significant powers over transport, planning, skills and employment, also with a focus on the environment. WECA was granted 30 million per year, so 900 million over 30 years of investment funding. And there's also WECA manages many other significant devolved pots of money. Specifically, transport, it manages a huge transport budget, but also manages other budgets devolved from central government. Next slide. So, an overview of WECA. I'm just going to focus on the right-hand side of the screen. If you're listening to this on a podcast, you're just going to have to go with me. But if you're watching the video, fabulous. So, as I said, 3 local council areas. In the north, we have South Gloucestershire, which has the towns of Thornbury, and then Yate and Chipping Sodbury, or Yate, as it's known to locals. We then have the North Fringe, which is basically the North Fringe of Bristol. So these are the suburbs which surround Bristol, which aren't in Bristol, but it's a continuous conurbation. So you've got Kingswood and then the North Fringe, which has Patchway and Filton. And then the biggest city in the area, which is the city of Bristol, 500,000 people, more or less, depending on when the students are in, a major city in the UK, and the biggest conurbation with the highest population. Then you've got Bath and North East Somerset, Keynsham just over the border from Bristol, and then the city of Bath, which is obviously a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And then in the south, you've got Midsummer Norton and Radstock. There are many other towns in this region, but those are the principally largest places. And then it's an overview of some of the key statistics for the region, which is 960,000 across the 3 local authority areas. So in total, 960,000 Demographically, 86% white, 5% Asian, 3.6% black, 3.5% mixed, 1.9% other. The gross value added for the region, so that's kind of like the gross domestic product, but for a region, is 35 billion. And then a GVA per person per hour is £35, which ranks at third out of all English combined authority areas. Unemployment rate is, the employment rate is 79%. 79.5, which ranks at the best out of the 12 existing combined authorities, and unemployment of 2.9%, which scores really lowly. In terms of the house prices, there's a housing crisis everywhere in the UK. If you live here in the UK in 2025, you know it. Renting is extortionate. Buying is extortionate, particularly in the south of England, but any of the big cities across the country, including Wales and Scotland, it's expensive. But yeah, the average house price is £400,000. That's 10 times the median average wage, which has gone up 10 years ago from 7 times. As a reference point, UK average house price is 285, so it's expensive here. 150,000 of residents live in deprived neighbourhoods. Within the UK, the West of England region is the second most productive region after London. Worth noting that this makes it unusual. Quite a few of the combined authorities are net takers from the economy, but this is a contributor to the economy. Right, we're going to move on to the next slide. All of our foreign viewers are going to be screaming out, absolutely screaming for whichever corner of the world they're in. What about North Somerset Council? Why aren't they part of the combined authority? It's a great question from all our foreign viewers. It was originally planned to be, and North Somerset and the other 3, as you can see on the map, used to be in the county of Avon. And the county of Avon existed between 74 and 96. It was disbanded, discontinued, destroyed by John Major at the end of his premiership, which left the 4 councils operating independently without a strategic council covering the whole area. Avon had its problems and it didn't entirely work, but the splitting up of Avon led to pretty poor regional leadership, and WECA is formed in a lot of ways to do some of the job of Avon while still having many of the powers remaining in the local council areas. So for viewers who aren't familiar, or foreign viewers, local councils are responsible for social services, for potholes and road maintenance, for special educational needs coverage, for adult social care, for schools. WECA's role is to provide strategic leadership and delivery of services at a strategic regional level. And North Somerset had intended to join WECA. And as you can see on the map, the main town there is Weston-super-Mare on the coast. But you also have Portishead, made famous by the band Portishead, and Clevedon as other towns, and Nailsea. And the airport actually sits just here, as I point out on the map, but it's on the near east side of North Somerset, nearest to Bristol, which is where the airport is. So the airport currently is not in WECA's area, which is a major issue strategically for WECA. But the Conservative-led council in North Somerset had planned to join WECA and then pulled out at the last minute, concerned about being ruled by a non-Conservative mayor. And more recently, in September 2024, the new Rainbow Coalition that runs North Somerset Council submitted an expression of interest to central government to join again, and that's being reviewed by the department. Angela Rayner is the Secretary of State for local government, but we're waiting really for a new mayor so that this can occur. Therefore, that means that the 216,000 residents in North Somerset aren't voting in this election and won't vote for the mayor in May 25. But in May 25, I think it's it's very likely that North Somerset will be part of WECA. And those residents will be voting. So whoever is elected the mayor in 2025 will probably have an influence over North Somerset, despite not having been elected there. So that's certainly of interest. Key policy challenges for the WECA area. So like I said, this is about strategic management of specific services. Local councils still are doing a lot of legwork in terms of delivery, but it's about that strategic delivery of services. WECA, one of the main roles is system management of the transport system. With large areas spend, it covers trains, buses, active travel, and new forms of transport like e-bikes and e-scooters, but also in terms of electric vehicle charging, which will be coming down the line. Quite a few charge points will be delivered by WECA in the coming 5 years. Budgets are under pressure, and inflation has a huge impact, particularly on running buses. And we have very rural areas in the WECA area, so some of those bus routes really challenging with inflation to be profitable. And so they need significant subsidies, which is a challenge when budgets are under pressure and the mayor has competing demands. Next issue is transport, is mass transit. Bristol does not have an underground, a tram, an integrated train service, or mass rapid bus. don't have any of those. And this is a mega issue. If you talk to anyone who lives in the greater Bristol area, or anyone who lives in the whole area as a large, transport is not good enough. As someone who's lived in London and in other European cities with really good transport, you can tell if you live outside of where the main bus routes run or where the train lines go, it is really challenging for local transport. So there's a need for a mass transit system. Those proposals in development, although they've been delayed because the previous mayor is about to be argued with the other local council leaders about the future direction of mass transit. To note, West Yorkshire have got a £2 billion proposal using significant central government funds whilst raising their own funds to deliver trams in Bradford and Leeds. WECA needs to do something at this scale if it's serious about changing transport and getting people out of cars and decarbonising. Next up, planning and housing. Every Metro Mayor has to publish a spatial development strategy. It's a requirement. The spatial development strategy is the plan written in consultation with local councils sitting beneath WECA to deliver housing over the coming decades. The previous spatial development plan failed because the about to be passed mayor couldn't agree to housing numbers with local councils, specifically South Gloucestershire. And so the plan was dead in the water and never got published and progressed and then developed further. The new mayor will have to do this, and it'll be really important, particularly with the Labour national government's priority to deliver housing. Another big issue is further devolution and then North Somerset. So I've talked some length about North Somerset joining, but it would be another 200,000 people, additional budgets, and the airport joining, which is really important. The other side here is further devolution. The Labour government are pushing out more devolution and enhanced devolution deals to the combined authorities, and any mayor coming into the role will want to be getting that additional money and those additional powers. And finally, environment, a massive issue. Climate emergency has already been declared by WECA, and WECA has net zero emissions by 2030. Whether they'll deliver to that is to be seen, but these are really ambitious timelines, and the environment is very much on the forefront of decision makers' minds across the region. Other councils like Bristol have also declared a climate emergency. So the context of 2025, where are we? What's going on in the west of England? So the current mayor, who's about to be out of office, is Dan Norris, Mayor Dan Norris. He was elected as an MP as well, so he's double jobbing, getting £84,000 as a MP, and then getting another £85,000 to be a mayor. So he's not doing too badly right now. But he was elected as an MP in July 2024, taking North East Somerset Hannam from Jacob Rees-Mogg, which is a big scalp for the Labour Party. Mayor Norris cannot run again and is not running again due to Labour Party rules about double jobbing. They've stopped people being allowed to double job. So there's a new Labour candidate running. We're changing from the supplementary vote system, and this is true of all of the Metro mayors on the 1st of May this year, so all 4, plus the 2 other mayors, which aren't Metro mayors, being elected. Going to first past the post system, where it's a simple plurality. We call it first past the post in the UK, but it's just person with the most votes win. There's no second round, there's no PR. It's just a simple horse race. First past the post. This change was made by the Conservative government in the previous Parliament. Not sure why. Not really that necessary. Very, very few elections have been overturned by the system, but the second choice did allow people who voted for small parties to then vote for a bigger party and have their voices heard. And it feels, to me at least, a shame that we don't have that system. Perhaps something Labour will look at during this government to reverse, but it's not a priority as I understand it. And then there was a best value notice. And you're going to say, Ed, what is a best value notice? Well, a best value notice is a bollocking. Really, it is a significant telling off. It's special measures. It was the combined authority being placed under special measures. That happened in summer 24, and it's just been removed. So it took them less than a year to come out of it. There were 4 reasons why that the government published when they wrote their special measures assessment, but 2 of those are relating to poor relationships between the Metro Mayor and the leaders of the local councils. So the collaborative working has not really been working well in the WECA region recently. And that has been a problem, although they have been able to move out of it, which is a success for WECA. And then bombshell developments, guys. Absolute bombshell. I don't think anyone expected this. I certainly didn't. The current mayor, Dan Norris, was arrested on Friday the 4th of April under suspicion of various serious sexual offences, including child sex offences, abduction, rape and misconduct in a public office. He's not running in this election, however. This has received national press coverage and will be a concern on the doorstep, particularly for the Labour candidate and canvassers. So major news. And he's also a Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and is currently suspended for that. Now, he has been bailed pending further investigation, has not been formally charged in court yet, but that is likely to come if they are announcing it publicly. Okay, let's go to the previous elections. So we'll talk about what happened before we come to what we think might happen this time round. So in 2017, it was a Conservative victory. What happened? Well, looking at the first round vote, the Conservatives got 27, Labour 22, Lib Dems 20, an independent who was a Blairite insurgent candidate running against Labour's left-wing candidate got 15%. Then the Greens got 11, and then UKIP got 4. And then in the second round vote, it was pretty close, but the Tories run at 70,000 to 65, so that's 51% to 48. Very close after the second round votes. But 60,000 of those second place votes didn't go on the top two candidates, so they went missing. A lot of people not voting for the Labour candidate, even though voting for, I think, left-wing parties and the Lib Dems, the Independents and the Greens, but with their first place votes. But yeah, victory for the Tories is... Tories in government at the time, in national government at the time, and Labour under Jeremy Corbyn unable with a left-wing candidate to cut through. Turnout was very poor for this election. I don't think a lot of people were aware of exactly what they were voting for and what was at stake. But 29.7% turnout, so pretty poor. Next election, Labour's revenge. So the turnout was up, a 60.9% increase. Some of that was driven by having Bristol council elections simultaneously. That isn't happening this time round, and it's worth noting that neither Bristol, South Gloucester nor Baines have got local elections at the same time. So when the voters in the West of England go to vote on the 1st of May, they are only voting for the Metro Mayor, and that's likely to bring turnout down. I'm not entirely sure what to expect, but probably somewhere between 29 from the previous election and 36. People may be motivated by national issues. Local election turnout in the UK is often poor. So what happened? So in the first round, Labour got 33, Conservatives got 28, Greens got 21, and Lib Dems got 16.3. So all the parties got above 10. 4 parties got above 10%. Greens and Lib Dems can be pretty pleased with what they did. Labour and then did very well, and with the second place votes, absolutely stormed it. But here we need to really think about the first round vote, because we won't have a second round vote on the 1st of May of 25. But it's just worth noticing that on this slide, 33% would win it. You win with 33%, and in 2017, going back a slide, to beat Leslie Mansell, you needed just 23%, really, which are quite low totals. And that sort of shows the competitiveness. We've not got individuals getting 35, 40, 45% of the vote to win on the first round vote. And I think that's likely to be repeated in this election. So, what about local councils? I hear you say. Well, particularly to our foreign listeners, I'll give you an overview of what's going on in the councils, the 3 council areas. After North East Somerset, 59 councillors, and it's dominated by the Liberal Democrats, 40 in the majority there. Bristol, very much a mixed picture, 70 councillors in total, and the Greens are running at minority control with a confidence in supply on votes from the Lib Dems. Labour have got 21, Conservatives 7, Lib Dems 8, Greens 34. Then you've got South Gloucestershire, which is a Liberal Democrat-Labour coalition. Liberal Democrats being the dominant party. They've got 20 councillors. Labour have got 16. Conservatives are in opposition with 25, and then there's 2 independents. And overall, you can see on the far right column here, of the 190 councillors in total, it's a very mixed picture. No one party dominates. Labour have got 23% of the councillors, Tories 17, Lib Dems 36, and the Greens 19. Independents have got 5%. So just trying to give you a picture of this is not a region with one party overwhelmingly dominating. And that continues when we come to look to the members of parliament, which is about to come up. But this is up for grabs. All of the parties have councillors, which means they've got activists who are willing to go and knock doors and deliver leaflets in their areas where they're strong. You know, obviously Labour Party, very big in the Greater Bristol area, but once you get outside of that, the Tories, Lib Dems are very competitive, and within Bristol, in the central areas in particular, the Greens are a force. Looking at the candidates, so we've got 6 candidates for this election. Labour, Helen Godwin, she's former Bristol City Councillor and then has moved into consultancy. She was a cabinet member under the former Bristol Mayor, Marvin Rees, in his administration. The Lib Dems have got Ollie Henman, who's a councillor in Bath and North East Somerset and currently serves as the cabinet project lead on the climate emergency. Then you have, for the Greens, Mary Page, stood as a parliamentary candidate for Bristol North West in 2024 July general election, and has run successful campaigns in Bristol So although she hasn't had individual electoral success, she did run the campaign to abolish the Bristol mayor, which occurred in the referendum in 2022. She is previously a Lib Dem of interest. Next up, we've got Ian Scott, who is an independent. He's a South Gloucestershire councillor and former Labour Party member. He decided to run against Helen Godwin as the official Labour Party member, has been expelled from the party. He claims discrimination over age and facing discrimination in the selection processes. Next up is Steve Smith, a businessman and former councillor in Bristol. He served in the Westbury and Trim ward between 2018 and 2024. And then we've got Aaron Banks, Brexiteer, famous Brexiteer, and the kind of an insurgent right-wing candidate, very close ally with Nigel Farage, been pictured with Donald Trump in his hotels, and made a donation of 9 million to the Leave.eu campaign. Previously has donated significant sums to the Conservatives and then latterly UKIP and the Brexit Party. Right, our most recent data point, what's happened in the most recent election with the data that we can use. The West of England had, well, the whole of the country had a general election in July 24, but let's look at what happened in the West of England. There are 9 MPs in this area. The Conservatives, as you can see, there's no blue on this map. The Conservatives were completely wiped out, losing all 3 MPs. So Filton and Bradley Stoke went to Labour, Thornbury and Yate went to Lib Dems, and North East Somerset and Hannon went to Labour. The Kingswood seat was abolished and brought into the to North East Somerset and Bristol North East seats. The Greens took Bristol Central from Labour, which is an amazing result, and they've been targeting that seat for a number of general elections. So they're very pleased with that. And Carla Denyer, the co-leader of the Green Party, won that seat from Thangham Debonair, who's now sitting in the House of Lords. And also worth noting that the Greens performed better across the 9 constituencies than the Conservatives, and we'll show you the data shortly, but it was a really impressive result. Next up, it's worth noting that the general election has a much higher turnout than we can expect for the WACA mayoral election. And for this data that follows, I've had to take out Frome and East Somerset because it sits between 2 council areas. So Frome and East Somerset, some of it is in the WACA region and a lot of it isn't. So I haven't included that, but for transparency, it's mainly Lib Dem with some Conservative reform, Labour and Greens, quite a mixed seat. And I didn't include that data because most of that seat is not in the region. So here's the raw data, a lot of numbers here, and you can pause the podcast and just zoom in. Please do. It took me quite a while to create that table, so if you fancy having a look. But really, like I said, there are 9 MPs, 6 Labour, 2 Lib Dem, 1 Green. The Tories lost all of theirs. And in terms of vote totals, I will move on to the next slide, but here is what each of the party did across the whole region for votes. So Conservatives got 18,000, which is about 19%. The Greens got 81,000, just over 19%. Labour got 153,000, which is 36%. Lib Dems got 60,000, about 14%. Reform, although they didn't stand in 1 seat, but Reform got 43,000 votes, which is about 10%. And then the other smaller candidates and independents and all the other parties, Social Democrats, etc., they got 1.5% of the votes. Labour dominant in that election across the region. And if that were to be repeated, we expect them to be overwhelming favourites. Because of the prevailing winds and the issues that Labour are facing, I don't think we can expect Labour to get 36% of the vote. And that makes this election very interesting because it is competitive. 5 parties can fight over this region quite tenably, and we will almost certainly have a very, very close result on the 2nd of May. So what's happening in the polling? There is no regional polling, which has been done that I can find, which is a real shame because this is, I think, the most interesting of the elections on the 1st of May, given that 5 parties could potentially win it. But the national polling, those of you who follow this kind of thing will be very familiar with the polling before the general election where Labour was doing very, very well, and then suddenly it came down and they got about 34% of the vote nationally. The Tories ended in the low 20s, Reform around 14, the Lib Dems on 12, the Greens on 6-7. So that's what happened at the general election. Since then, Labour have fallen to 24%. Lots of scandals. Governing is proving to be very complicated and very difficult. Who would have thought it? And they've done some pretty unpopular things, such as cutting the winter fuel payment to pensioners and making reductions in the personal independent payments in terms of disability for our foreign viewers. Personal independent payments are our disability benefits, and they're cutting those because those people obviously don't need any more money, so they think. So current polling is 24 on Reform, and I think it's worth saying that Reform are nationally doing very well in the polls. Labour, 24%. The Conservatives on 22. Lib Dems on 15. The Greens on 9. And then other smaller parties here. That's on the national poll. People will not be voting for the Scottish Nationalists in the west of England, I'm afraid. But yes, I think the main takeaways here is Labour have dropped about 10% and Reform have risen 10% to 24%, and the Tories remain not really making any cut through under Kemi Badenoch's leadership. The averages, polling averages are displayed here to give you a sense of where we are. And also I've included the winning mark on each of the recent mayoral elections. 27 was the winning mark on the first election, as previously stated, but we've got the second place being on 22. So you only needed 22.5% to win. And then in the previous round, you needed 29%. In 2021, you needed 29% to win. That was with 4 parties. In the general election, Labour were the most successful across the region with 36%, but all of the other parties were fairly competitive, scoring over 10%. And the polling is where the polling's at. Labour and Reform, much of a muchness, 25, 24%. Conservatives on 22, and then Lib Dems and Greens doing pretty well on the amounts that they've got. So the wild, wild west, the wild, wild west of England is where we are. And I think this election's going to be wild. If you find such things exciting, which I do, you may guess, given that I've started a podcast about elections. Potentially a 5-way marginal, definitely a 5-way marginal, maybe a 5-way marginal. This is a 5-way marginal. And we don't have the second choice supplementary votes. So lots of voters, when they go into the polling booth, are going to have to think carefully, because before you had your first choice, you could go Green, you could go Lib Dem, you could go Reform, and then go, well, my second choice vote, I'm going to give it to one of the 2 major parties. This time round, they won't do that. But also, this time round, it feels different because Reform are insurgent. The Lib Dems are doing very well, cutting through in the media under Ed Davey, making many criticisms of Donald Trump, foreign policy, trade policy. The Greens, ultra competitive in this region. Like I said, they came second in 4 of the 9 seats during the general election, and the Lib Dems obviously are running 2 councils in the region. So Greens are ascendant in the region, very competitive, but did they spend all their money? Now, my understanding is they spent a lot of money on the general election to get those 4 seats. Not that much literature has been seen. I've not seen too much delivered through my door from the Green Party. And once they get out of central Bristol, a bit more sparse in terms of activists. But they are ascendant, they have done very well, and this is a real opportunity for them. Lib Dems gained MPs in the election from the Tories, and also they're running 2 of the councils. They have the most councillors, which means they have also a good ground game and have lots of activists in the parts of the region where they are active, who can deliver leaflets and knock doors. So the Lib Dems will fancy their chances. Reform, they're riding a national wave, but they are less popular in this region. They got 10% of the vote in the general election here. Nationally, they got 14. So they underperform in the West. And I think it's fair to say that this area it leans left wing, or centre to centre left wing, if you include the Greens, Labour and Lib Dems as centre to left wing. Reform is probably a bit of a stretch for them to win, but you never know. And you have the Conservatives, who are historically a player, who won the first election. They have ordinarily quite a few MPs, but they had such a bad year last year that they don't in the region, but ordinarily have MPs. And then, of course, Labour, traditionally the largest party. They did receive the most votes in the region a year ago. They do have many activists in the region, and they do have not the most councillors, but they do have councils in all 3 councils, a number of which. So they are active in all 3 of the council areas in a way that probably aren't in the other parties. But, like I said, cuts to the winter fuel payment, cuts to disability welfare payments. Hardy's going to cut through. This is an opportunity for people to give the government a bloody nose. And there are other cost of living and housing crisis issues that the government will be held responsible for. So it is wild. We've got 5 parties that I think can win it. I don't think Ian Scott can win it as an independent, but we'll have to wait and see how he cuts through and if he takes any votes away, particularly from Labour. The deposit is £5,000. He paid it himself out of his own money. I don't know if he's going to get it back because it takes 5%. You need to get 5% of the vote to get your deposit returned. The other 5 will all get their deposits returned. All 5 parties will get at least 5%. And I wouldn't be surprised if 5 parties get at least 10%. And that is remarkable. We don't see that very often in elections in the UK. And that's what makes this so interesting. It's all up for grabs. People get their core vote out, people go and campaign and canvass and get the leaflets out, do the social media, and then on the day do their get out the vote drive. You can go and win this. It's up for grabs, and it is a significant win for particularly the smaller parties. If the Greens were to win a Metro Mayor or Lib Dems, it'd be a very, very good result for them and would probably indicate them doing well elsewhere nationally as well. Okay, it's all to play for. Like I said, turnout's very likely to be low. Between 25 and 35% would be my guess. We'll have to wait and see. And you've got to get out your core vote. If you're a candidate, you need to get out your core vote with low turnout, with every vote really counting in this election. Greens, Lib Dems gaining. Looks like they're on the run and doing well. Labour on the defences because they've got the national government. Reform poses a huge challenge to the Conservatives. And I think the ceiling for the right-wing vote is probably around 35% in the region. He says it's a bit of guesswork there rather than polling model, but there is probably a left-wing skew to this region of 65% or centre to centre-left, as I said before. How does that split? Does the Reform candidate act like the Blairite candidate did in 2017, which really undercut the Corbynista Labour candidate's path to victory and basically sacrifices both the right-wing candidates because they get 15% each and they can't get to that winning mark of, say, 23, 24, 25%. I can't believe that I'm saying you can win on 23 or 24 or 25%, but that is probably the scale of the vote that you need, which is so low. And like I said, in 2017, if you had 22.3% of the vote, you would have won. And in 2021, with 28.7%, you would have won. And in those 2 elections, we had 6 candidates, well, 5 competitive ones, really, and then 4 competitive ones. So somewhere between those 2 figures, I think the winning mark will be between 22 and 28%. Feels like around 24, 25%. Let's see. When we do the review show, we'll look at that and see how well I did. But you do not need to get that much of the vote to win. But it's hyper competitive in a region that's very diverse. Lots of different parts of it. Countryside to small towns to smaller cities to bigger cities, and with all the kind of demographic differences that you get with, the bigger cities having Labour and Green votes, and then the small towns, villages being very conservative and even Reform right wing, and then also smaller towns with Lib Dem votes. It's a really interesting demographic across the region, and the skew and the mix of the populace is absolutely fascinating. So it's all to play for. Bibliography, you can pause here and have a look. Click on those links if you'd like to, but some of the data and some of the information is from there. But that is the bibliography if you do want to have a look through and see where I got some of this information and some of the data. If you wanted to dig into the mapping and the data, you can go and find some of the stuff there. But anyway, that was episode 1 of the Democracy Briefing podcast. Thank you so much for listening through. And if you would like to hear more about elections, they won't be just UK based, but we'll look at elections that are interesting across the globe, and also probably start delving into policy and briefing as well, so you can get the facts. Hope you enjoyed the show. Until next time, vote.